Resume. Great. Okay. So good morning. Happy Sunday to everyone. I'm going to be sharing a few documents with you along the way. You can access those documents as well through my Google Drive. So, either through my Google Drive or otherwise. So I'm going to put in the chat right now to everyone. This is sort of our agenda for the day. So if you want to follow along with that, you can click on it there and you can have it. Otherwise, I'm going to be sharing my screen so you can see it. Gabby, this isn't a good place for you to be right now. Go someplace else. Thank you. Okay, so let's start sharing my desktop. Okay, oops. Okay, so this is our workshop for the day, and I want to start out with just a little proviso, a little encouragement. It looks like a lot of you are on here. That's great. So which is that Seder means order, right? But the Seder is designed almost, it seems, to be one of the least orderly services, rituals, anything there is. No two Seders look the same, and that is how they are designed. They are not supposed to look the same. And so I wanted to share real quickly. I asked the cantor if he could drop by to share with us. Apparently last year, the cantor and Shoshi had a Seder for two, I guess for three, although the third was a baby. So and I wanted to see if he could just sort of intro with that experience, since all of our Seders are going to be maybe a little different than they've been before or how we expect. I thought that might be a good place to start. So Cantor, will you give us a little intro?
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, last year, we didn't have a setup to host a Seder, and we didn't feel like paying for a babysitter to be with Hadar while we went somewhere else on the first night. So we actually went earlier that afternoon to some of Shoshi's family in White Plains who were gathering. We spent some time with them, but then once it was getting to be sunset, we came home, and we had a Seder for just the two of us. And I really thought, I was not looking forward to that, and I thought that it would, I would be sitting there feeling sorry for myself and missing big gathering that Seders often are. But it was actually unexpectedly very lovely to just have a Seder, the two of us, so we could go at the pace we wanted to go. We could do what we wanted to do and not do what we didn't want to do. It was, while it's nice to have people and to try to balance the needs of everybody and try to make something that works for as many people as possible. It was also nice not to have to worry so much about that just for that one time. And it was actually a very lovely sort of event for us, kind of almost like sort of a date night Seder. So I just wanted to encourage people who may be feeling some loss over, large family gathering, which they were looking forward to and they have every year, and that's legitimate and that's real, and do what you need to do to grieve that loss. But also don't feel that all is lost. And there actually might be a lot to be gained, given the new opportunities we have under these unusual circumstances this year. So that's all I really wanted to say about that. I'm happy to say more, or we can leave it at that and go on.
Yes, I think we're going to leave it at that. That's an ongoing conversation I think we're all going to be having over the next 10 days or so. And we're here to continue it. But having recognized that, I want to highlight the point even more so and say that that Seders are supposed to look different. And the key to having a great Seder is just to go all in on whatever the Seder is that you're having. So And that doesn't mean you have to be Zooming a Seder or Google Hangouting a Seder or whatever. Like it could be that you just do a Seder for two, or a Seder for your family, or even a Seder for one. And I wanted to share, in case you thought like, well, that's not what a Seder is, and it's not what it's supposed to be. I was speaking with Rabbi Siegelman a couple days ago, and he mentioned that he had, in his Thursday night class, mentioned this particular Gemara, this particular passage of the Talmud. And I wanted to share it. So this is based on the Mishnah. We are looking at a daf of Gemara, a daf of the Talmud, a page of Talmud, Safin 116a, and it's saying it's talking about the 4 questions. It talks about what the questions are. Oop. Everyone hear me? Okay.
Now, yes.
Okay. Sorry. And now I seem to have lost my spot. So the son asks. So the Mishnah says that the son asks his father questions, and if the son does not have intelligence to ask questions on his own, his father teaches him the questions. Right? Not teaches him the story, interestingly, but teaches him the questions. And then when we get to the Talmud, this is the important part. The sages taught, if his son is not wise and knows how to inquire, his son asks. If his son is wise and knows how to inquire, his son asks him. But if he is not wise, his wife asks him. And if even his wife is not capable of asking, or if he has no wife, he asks himself. And even if 2 Torah scholars who know the halachot of Passover are sitting together and there is no one present to pose the questions, they ask each other. But so, when Rabbi Siegelman and I were talking about this, we thought it was fascinating that the rabbis, not only did they predict the idea that you might be alone for a Seder, right? This passage, this commentary probably comes from about the year, it's hard to say, 400, 500, maybe a little earlier, 300. But the rabbis understood that Seders could be done with just 2 people. Seders could even be done solo. And what's their advice? Their advice is you got to do the Seder no matter what, right? That even if he's alone, he has no wife, no kids, then he has to ask questions of himself, right? So there is an order to this, a motion to this, an idea about this that I think is very important. And we should know that we are not the first generation in the history of the Jewish people to be making Seder under difficult circumstances. That even when the rabbis had the idea of a Seder, they recognized that Seders were going to be done under all kinds of different circumstances. They even had the forethought 15, 16, 1700 years ago to predict our very own situation. The first Passover was particularly tough, as I mentioned in a couple places that we've been publishing. To be with our immediate family in our homes for the Seder, maybe capturing the sense, the drama of the first Passover Seder more than any other, right? Because what happened on the first Passover Seder? They slaughtered a lamb, they put the blood on the door, and they all went inside, and they really, really hoped that the Malach HaMavet, this silent death that was passing among the Egyptians, would not impact them. It certainly seems to be reflective of the experience we are about to have. Okay, enough on that. Let's talk about, I wanted to mention one more thing, sorry. If you go, if you hit the button on the bottom that says participants, you'll see a list of all the participants appear on the side. And at the bottom of that window, there is a button that should say raise hand. Everybody see that? If you see it, click it. Okay, Tammy sees it. Michael sees it. Okay, so if you have a question, I'm lowering all your hands now. Great, you're doing a great job. Okay, So this is just a little tutorial on Zoom for those of you who are going to be using it for your Seders. That's a useful button. So I can see when those things happen. Jonathan, if you don't have a raise hand button, the interface is a little different in the app or on a computer or on a phone versus on a computer. So you can always just chat. I have a question or something in the chat. That's just a little more quick and easy to do it. Okay, with that, we're now going to go forward. Okay. So, so that was, what does this say?
How many people?
Juggling a lot of windows. You can click on your name and options come up, and you can click raise hand there. Okay, so other ways to get there. Okay, let's talk about what a Seder is. So ostensibly, we have a Seder to give us an opportunity to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt, right? The very first Seder was a meal that was eaten, we just talked about it, on the first night. And the Torah, when it commanded us to, we are on this spot, by the way. The Torah, when it commanded us to eat a Passover sacrifice, gave us very specific instructions of how to eat it. You got to eat it, one per household. If your household was too small to eat an entire lamb, then share it with the people in your courtyard. And it has to be eaten all during the night of Passover, and anything left over has to be burnt up, and it should be eaten with matzah and with maror. And then the Torah tells us, continue this practice of eating your Passover sacrifice, a commemorative Passover sacrifice. Obviously, no more painting our mezuzot, our doorposts with blood, but we should kill and eat this lamb. And for generations and generations, that is exactly what we did. And you can imagine that it was a pretty poignant holiday, as every year on the night of the Exodus, on this frightful night when everyone was huddled in their houses and the 10th plague was going on, this night of death for the Egyptians and redemption for the Jewish people, to stop and slaughter a lamb, sacrifice a lamb, and to have a giant feast of freedom was probably a very poignant moment every year in the liturgical calendar. And then in the year 70 CE, what happens? The temple is destroyed, and we can't make sacrifices anymore. And so the rabbis do what rabbis do. I mean, what rabbis are named for, right? They made up an entire ritual that was supposed to reflect the weight and the meaning of making a Passover sacrifice, right? Which was self-explanatory. And the rabbis need to come up with a ritual that people can do in their homes that can be reflective of that same drama, to draw us in and make it just as significant. And that is what a Seder is supposed to be, right? The Seder is a rabbinic way, just like prayer takes the place of other sacrifices. The Seder is taking the place of the Passover sacrifice. And so the elements in the Seder are all about reenacting that night, giving it that sense of weight and significance for us and our families, and ultimately kind of sort of telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt. So everyone with me so far. And that ritual that the rabbis instituted 2,000 or so years ago is the very same ritual, with a few glosses, that we do today. If you look at the Mishnah, chapter 10 of Tractate Psachim, the tractate known as Arvei Psachim, the ritual that the rabbis put into place is very similar to the ritual that we do today. So the goal, hold on. So before I go any further on that, are there any questions? Okay, great. So so the goal of the Seder then is to have this meaningful occasion. And I already mentioned that it can be done with any number of people. And the reason why the rabbis say here that a man should even ask himself, right, or a head of household, or I guess you could say it would work just as well for a woman, could even ask herself, is because it's not just a matter of telling the story, right? If we say it's just a matter of telling the story, what is with all this question asking? But something different is going on here. There's something about question asking, exploring, that makes the whole moment more meaningful and more significant. So no matter how many people are at your Seder, it's our job to make it meaningful. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the goals of the Seder, and then we'll go start to discuss the Seder itself and resources that you'll need to make your Seder, and then finally we'll take as much time as we can to go through each part of the Seder to understand a little bit more. And by the way, feel free to take this document and copy it. I'll share the link again before we're done, and you can use that as a guide or make your own notes on it or whatever. That's why I put together this document. Okay, so someone asks you, what's the goal of the Seder? Why do we have a Seder? They will tell you, we have a Seder in order to tell the story of the Exodus. But what's the problem with that explanation of the Seder? Someone tell me why that doesn't seem to make sense.
We don't spend very much time telling the actual story. It's not like we take out the first 12 chapters of Exodus and read them, which would be telling the story.
Right. If we wanted to tell the story of the Exodus, we have it written very well for us. It probably would take about the same amount of time as our Seder. You know, you say, well, it's very long. Well, the Seder is not exactly a short version of the story. But we don't actually tell the story in the Seder. Very little telling of the story in the Seder itself. So the question is, if the goal is to tell the story, why is the Seder so free of so much of the story as it's told in Exodus, or even a simple telling in any way, shape, or form? So what can we learn? Like, give me a few ideas. Give me, what do we learn from the fact that the Haggadah, which is literally means the telling, does not in fact tell much of the story? Come on, who came with their thinking caps on today? So maybe it's that the goal is not in fact to tell the story, but what is the goal? What might the goal be if you look at the Seder as we have it? Yeah, Larry, you're unmuted.
To get people to ask questions. The goal is to get people to ask questions and learn about the story by the questions that they ask.
Beautiful. And why would the goal be? Hold on, I'm reading these comments. They came faster than it seems that the goal is to tell the story, but in a manner that invites questions and thoughtful conversation. We could pose questions as though we want to experience it together. Beautiful. But why ask questions? What is it about questions that the rabbis would go so out of their way to make sure there are questions at the Seder? Yeah, Fern.
To create discussion, to get people to think about more than just the story, but the essential points of the story.
right? To get people to think more deeply about it, right? Get the essential points. I love that. What else? I give a little shout out to Judy Simkin there. Hi, Judy.
Hi, good morning, Boker Tov.
It's nice to see you. Judy is
Hi.
a former congregant of mine from New Jersey. We haven't seen each other in a while. So, okay, even more to put ourselves into a situation that might help us to relate. I love that questions help us relate, to see ourselves as if ourselves left Egypt, to experience it as best possible. Yes, questions, personalize it. Oh, can I not see raised hands? Why don't I see any raised hands? Oh, I do, here. Oh, Tammy. Oh, I can't unmute you, Tam. Oh, there you go.
Sorry. I was going to say that I think it's because learning is so important to the rabbis, and they think that maybe that by asking questions, it will inspire learning.
Beautiful. And Ian, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So I think kind of just piggybacking on what Tammy just said is that it's through the discussion and the interaction that the question invites where the true learning happens. It's almost like the Torah scholars are encouraged to learn in pairs because it's through the interactive discussion that they can bring that learning to a higher level, kind of similar concept.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you know, in the same way that I invited the discussion just now among all of us, something about when you ask a question, you just engage in a different way. And you engage in a different way, and you kind of own the story, right? If I just tell you the story, I've told you a story. But if you ask questions, you're now guiding my telling of the story, right? You're taking it in a direction that you want it to be. And so the Seder done in this way becomes almost like a group storytelling, right? And when done right, it's not just the leader telling the story, but it's all of us telling a story together, going in different directions based on the questions that are asked. So the goal is kind of to tell a story, but more, but even more, the goal is to create a conversation, right? To beg questions. And part of the reason why the Haggadah is so circuitous and such an odd way to tell a story is it's made to beg questions. Even the very simple question of, why don't we just tell the story? Why don't we just read Exodus? Or why don't we just retell it ourselves? And as we go through each step of the Seder, you'll see that not only do these pieces not always make sense to us in the storytelling, I'm pretty sure they didn't make sense always to the rabbis either. And that's how they wanted it. They wanted to ask goals. Maimonides, the Rambam, said that you have to do all kinds of things different, even year to year in your Seder, to encourage different questions. So they say Maimonides used to collect the plates at the beginning of his Seder, that he would start by collecting the plates. And so someone would say, hey, why are you collecting the plates? And again, a question would be asked and he could go from there. Another one was that they would give out candies or whatnot at the beginning, or dessert at the beginning of the meal before they even started the Seder, to get the kids to ask, wow, we're starting with dessert. Why are we starting with dessert? And again, they'd go from there with that question, but it had to start with questions. Because of that, because this is group storytelling, not individual storytelling, every Seder should be different, and it's a good thing. The rabbis wanted us to have every Seder look different. This year, we're having a different Seder, not by choice, for most of us. Our Seder is going to look very different, but the rabbis would say, great, mix it up a little. Beg questions that we haven't had before. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion at our Seders that is not going to be like any discussion we've had in the past. And that might be, in the long run, as long as we all stay healthy and safe, a good thing. that there's an opportunity to learn and to tell the story from a new perspective that we all have this year that we didn't have before. Okay, everybody still is with me. Great. Okay, then let's move forward again a little bit. So the Seder in general, while the story is supposed to be different, there are themes that will run through the Seder. I'm sorry. One more point about every Seder being different. Even in the Mishnah itself, there was a big debate over how we should tell the story. And like good conservative Jews, what did the rabbis decide when they realized that there's a difference of opinion of how they should tell the story? What do we do when we can't decide between two opinions?
They did both of them.
we do both of them. So the rabbis did the same. And that's why for those of you who've been to a lot of Seders or traditional Seder, that's why we start out with a whole storytelling that goes through my father was a wandering Aramean and the 10 plagues. And what comes immediately after that? Rabban Gamliel said, if you haven't mentioned these three things, you haven't done your Seder. Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. That is, we've talked about Pesach, Matzah, and Maror already. The reason why Rabban Gamliel's Seder is stuck in at the end is because the rabbi said, well, yeah, we should probably do both. So not only is there encouragement that every Seder should be different, but even in our Seder, we include multiple Seders. Again, helping to explain why the Haggadah feels a little complicated and a little hard to manage. Going on the theme that every Seder should be different, for anyone who's feeling intimidated about the Seder that is coming, anyone who's feeling like I've never made Seder, and yes, we're definitely going to come to different people learning in different ways. And it's a great point. And that Gemara emphasizes that as well. Like the kid should ask, but if the kid can't ask, the father asks these questions, or if it's adults, the questions still need to be asked. It encourages everyone to meet where they're at. And so I want to mention here that if you've never made a Seder before, or if you've made a Seder before, but like my wife, only for 25 or more people, and you don't know what a Seder of just you and your family looks like, then you don't have to make a Seder the way I'm going to make a Seder. And I'm not going to make a Seder like I made a Seder last year for 30 people. And that the Seder is made for you to mold to be what you need it to be. There are, if it's a concern of yours, halakhic requirements, right? Jewish legal requirements of parts of your Seder. And I'll go through those as we go through it, as we look at the Haggadah in a couple of minutes. And I will highlight what definitely needs to be in there and what you can probably get away with skipping. But if the Jewish legal limitations on exactly what a Seder needs to look like is not so important to you personally, or if at your Seder, it's just going to be you and your partner and 4 children, which is what my Seder is going to look like, and it never has before, then the Seder should be tailored towards your audience, right? And that the job of the leader of the Seder is to recognize who's going to be at the Seder and to tailor the experience to those people, right? And to recognize what's going on in the world around us and to tailor the experience to the experience we are all having now. So I'm going to go through the Haggadah and highlight all the different parts. But you should remember that does not mean you need to do all these parts. You need to pick and choose a few of the parts that makes sense to you or that you have what to say about. Encourage you to tune in again on Thursday evening. Rabbi Siegelman and I are going to take some of these parts. We're going to give ideas about meanings that they might have that are special to this moment, so that those are things that you could talk about at your Seder, or just to think about and reflect on for ourselves. But the Seder that I am not going to say, this is how you do a Seder for one, or this is how you do a Seder for 6 when 4 are children, or this is how you do a Seder for 2. All I can say is, when you make a Seder, it should be tailored to the people who are going to be at your Seder. And it should, and that is another way in which it can and should look different. There's all kinds of resources that you can see online for engaging all different kinds of people, most of which have been made free because of the circumstances of what's going on with COVID. And so take a little time in your preparation. You can look at the resources I'm going to give you, but you can also just Google around the internet and see what is there for you. Okay. Okay. Someone is being loud. Hold on. We are going to YouTube. Live being... Okay. So every Seder, though, however you approach it, should contain certain themes, right? So the Seder should contain some kind of telling of the story of the Exodus, whatever that might mean to you. The rabbis point out that very important in the telling is the theme of 4. So there are a lot of 4s in the Seder. Right? We'll have 4 cups of wine, 4 cups of wine, 4 sons, 4 questions. Anybody know, by the way, why the number 4 has such significance for the Seder? What's the explanation of the 4s? Nobody's got anything on the 4.
Names.
What's that, Leslie?
4 names for the holiday.
Okay, so what explanation is that Passover is called 4 different things: Chag HaAviv, Zman Cherutenu, et cetera, time of our freedom, the spring holiday. So that's one explanation. Other thoughts? Yeah, I don't have a great answer for you, to be honest. But that is an example of the kind of question to throw up at your Seder and see what people come up with. And you want to get people's juices flowing. I mean, yeah, Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing, the compass is 4 directions.
What's that? Someone else said the compass has 4 directions. Sure, and we are spread in 4 directions, and so sure. Ian, what were you going to say?
Yeah,
Just a reaction against the concept of the Trinity. So just to pick a number other than 3 to distinguish ourselves.
Oh, I like that. Sure, just because it's not 3.
They're doing
By the way,
before the Trinity.
What's that, Howard?
We're doing Seder before the Trinity.
Well, around the same time. We were doing the original Seder with the sacrifice before the Trinity. But our Seder ritual grows up around the around the same time. And the Talmud does definitely have polemics against the budding Christian faith and ideas. Sorry, I'm just sound work here. Sorry, if you are not speaking, I just went through and I muted a bunch of you. If you're not speaking, do try to keep yourselves muted because it's a little distracting. By the way, just as an interesting side note, in the Mishnah originally, there are not 4 questions. There are 3 questions. And an extra one, and they're different, by the way. Not only are they 3, but the 3 are not 3 that are included in our 4. Meaning 2 are the same and 1 is different. because we do things differently now. And so the Seder has grown and changed over time. And somewhere after the year 200, we added in a fourth question to go with this theme of fours. So the theme of fours is very important. And this idea, again, of asking questions, it's not that we know solidly what the right answer is. It's that you and whoever you're with are going to come up with the answers that are going to guide your conversation. Of course, we also have four sons. Did I say four sons? Yeah. Four sons, which will come to that part of the Seder, but also goes to different kinds of learners and things like that. Another very important theme, oh boy, I'm all over the place, okay. Another very important theme to talk about is the theme of slavery to redemption, right? So the Seder always starts off negative and goes to positive, just like the Exodus story, I guess. And so we see that in the different symbols that we have, right? So for example, at the beginning of the Seder, what do we call the matzah? What's that, Ian?
Bread of our affliction.
Right, lechem oni, the bread of poverty or the bread of affliction, right? And by the end of the first part of the Seder, what is the matzah?
Bread of freedom.
Bread of freedom, bread of redemption, right? And we start out the story, how do we refer to ourselves? Avadim hayinu, right? What does that mean? We were slaves, right? At the beginning, we were slaves, and by the end, free people marching out of Egypt, right? Not only that, there's a little added. Most of us probably skip it in our seders, but there's a passage, right? My ancestors were idol worshippers, and then Abraham. There's this weird thing about Abraham that we're like, what is this doing in the Exodus story? Well, it's there because not only are we slaves physically in Egypt, but we were slaves spiritually in not having a relationship with God. So there's the actual Exodus story of redemption where we start as slaves and go forward. We start with the bread of affliction and go forward to the feast of freedom. And then there's like an even bigger meta story being told where we were idol worshippers, and what's the ultimate redemption in the Seder? Where do we end up from idol worshippers? What's the culmination? Who's gonna come drink your extra wine? What's that? Come on, somebody say it.
Eliyahu.
Elijah. Oh, Rachel, thanks. Elijah, right? Elijah's gonna come, and why Elijah? What's so special about Elijah? Why he's crashing all our Seders?
He's going to announce the Messianic age.
Right. Elijah's job is to hold on one second, Michael. Elijah's job is to be the harbinger of the Messiah. Right. So the reason why we start as spiritual and physical slaves and go ultimately to singing Hallel, like this great service of praise, and then opening the door for Elijah to come, is because we're recognizing, that is the pathway of the Seder, from being very lowly in every way to being very elevated in every way. I had a request for the passage in the Mishnah, which I'm happy to share with you right now, saying that there's only 3 questions. It's been a little while, but it is right where I was showing you earlier. The Mishnah lists the questions. Right, so this is the Mishnah with the 4 questions. Why is this night different from all other nights? By the way, you can interpret this as 1 question with 4 parts, right? Or 1 question, and these are the answers. On all other nights we eat matzah, and this one there. So even calling it the 4 questions is questionable. So on all other nights we eat leavened bread and matzah. As preferred on this night, only matzah. That one we know. On all other nights, we eat other vegetables. On this night, bitter herbs. We also know that one. The Mishnah continues its list of questions. When the temple was standing, one would ask. So, by the way, this "when the temple was standing" is not in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is only these bold words. So on all other nights, we eat either roasted, stewed, or cooked meat. But on this night, all the meat is roasted, the meat of the Paschal lamb. The problem is, of course, that we don't eat roasted meat anymore. So, in fact, the rabbi said specifically, you should not eat roasted lamb on the Passover in memory of the destruction of the temple, in memory of the temple. And so, so that question changed into a different question. And then final question is asked even after, so fine. So up until there, take this one away. These were 3 questions that they said were asked on the Seder night. And then they said, after the destruction of the temple, this one dropped out, and instead it got replaced with this one. On all other nights, we dip the vegetables in a liquid during the meal only once. However, on this night, we dip twice. Now, this one sounds familiar, but how is it different from the way the way we ask that same question?
There's no mention of the liquids. It just says why we dip twice, but not specific to what we should be dipping.
Right, but what's the first part of the question? On all other nights, we dip vegetables once. Tonight, we dip twice. But how do we ask the question? Ein anu matbilin, afilu pa'am achat. What does that mean? The Hebrew scholars. On all other nights, we don't dip even once. But on this night, we dip twice. Why in the Mishnah do they say on all other nights we dip once, but this time twice? Because who's ever had a meal in the Middle East? Who's ever gone to Israel and had a meal? Yeah, what do you do? How do you eat your food? You take some bread and you dip it. That was just how you ate. So in the Mishnah, when they wrote about the dipping, they said, oh, we dip once. And now on this night, we dip twice. But when we say it, we say on all other nights, we don't dip at all because we don't. And on this night, twice. It's an interesting little change. So you have 3 questions before the destruction, one including why they roasted meat, 3 questions after the destruction, one of them being, why do we dip? And which question is missing? We're missing a 4th question.
We recline.
Reclining, yes, thank you, Tammy. Right, why is there no question about reclining? Well, possibly because they just added that one in to make 4 later on. The Mishnah itself and the Gemara for sure talk about reclining. So it's not that it wasn't done as a practice. And actually, I'm going to use this as a little bit of a segue because we've got to plow forward here. I want to use this as a segue to what you will need in preparation for your Seder. And by the way, if you're planning on Zooming a Seder, you need to make sure that everybody has these things wherever they are. Right? People are not going to be able to participate in your Seder if they don't have the setup of a Seder before them. Okay, so I'm going to move us forward a little bit. The first thing you need is Haggadahs, right? So this website right here, Haggadahs Are Us. Tammy and I like it very much. And as you can see, they are still saying that they can get you hard copies of a Haggadah. So if you want to have hard copies of a Haggadah, and I think they're nice things to own anyway, and it's great that these folks are trying so hard to get them to us, right? 2 days to Maine and Georgia, Minnesota and Texas, 3 days to Florida, 4 days to the West Coast. But they have a great selection. This one right here, A Night to Remember, is the one that we use in our house. It's very creative, very engaging. So I recommend that. If you are starting a Seder for the first time, I recommend, I don't even know if this is available anymore, but this book changed my life. This is A Different Night. It's a big Haggadah, don't plan to do it all. Yes, definitely don't plan to do it all. This is a leader's guide to Seders in general, and it's fantastic. It's amazing. I hope it's still available. If it is available, they have all the different night stuff at Haggadahs R Us, but it is the best, I think, guide to sort of how to creatively do a Seder, how to prepare for a Seder. So I highly recommend that. If you either are not inclined to buy a Haggadah, or you are just looking for something for people who are far away to follow along with, the Cantor shared with me this doc, which is an amazing collection. Come on, there we go, of free downloadable Haggadahs. They are from all different organizations, all different bents. So take some time. The key to a successful Seder, unquestionably, is preparation. And you're all watching this, so you've started your preparation already. Go through some of these links and see what they are like, and decide which one might be best for your family. I think they're great. This is a neat website right here, actually. Haggadot.com allows you to build your own Haggadah. There's all different kinds of pieces of Haggadah, and you can put them in whatever order you want to make your own Haggadah, which is just a neat service, and it's free. So that seemed neat. I've never used it myself, but their promo video is pretty impressive. So if it works as well as their promo video, it might be worth checking that out too. To use it, you just have to make an account, and I didn't have time or the inclination to do so. The Haggadah that we're going to be working off of today is this one. This is a free Haggadah that Barry Dove Lerner put together. That just is an easy one, I think, for just has all the traditional text, and we can play off of that. Okay, in preparing, you will need a Seder plate. If you have a Seder plate, great. I have one. I sat down here and I didn't even realize that my Seder plate was over my shoulder until I looked at myself in the camera. So that was convenient. If you don't have a Seder plate, that's okay. You don't need to order a Seder plate. There's nothing special about a Seder plate. Only recently found in our boxes. Oh, I guess that's how it appeared there. On a Seder plate, there are 6 spots, and they are these 6 spots. And I will actually show you on our Seder plate, since it happens to be right here. The spots are for karpas, right, which is listed here as greens or something green. They are zroa, which is shenton, chazeret, which is bitter herbs, and maror, which is more bitter herbs, and a beitza, which is a roasted egg, and charoset, which is a mixture I put here of apples, wine, and nuts chopped up like mortar. There's actually dozens of recipes for charoset. But charoset also goes on the Seder plate, and often in the middle, you'll have a bowl of salt water. And these are all items that you'll need in the Seder. Make sure I don't break my Seder plate. Okay, I think it's good. These are all items that you will need in the Seder. So when you set up your table, you know, we put all these things on it in order so that we can go from step to step along the way. And again, I cannot emphasize enough that preparation is huge for this. By the way, you can look online. There's all kinds of recipes for charoset. even, by the way, like great rabbis like Maimonides and Rashi, they all had their own charoset recipe. So, and they were not all supposed to look like mortar. Some of them were made with spices to be like the hay that was in the bricks. So there's not one right way to do it. Okay, so these are the 6 things that go on a Seder plate. So if you don't have a Seder plate, make a Seder plate. And if you have kids, that's a great way to prep for this. You know, get a paper plate and decorate it or whatever it is. Let me make this point very specifically, because I think it's important, right? There are 2 sides of doing all these Seder things. One is to fulfill the mitzvah, to have all the right things on the table to be able to do the steps and do them easily. 2 is hidur mitzvah, is to make them beautiful. So if you have a beautiful Seder plate sitting at home, a la this one, great. But if you don't, that's also okay. If you don't, that's also okay. Right? It doesn't need to be beautiful. Whatever you make, however you do it, is going to be beautiful. Now, another question, where do we get the idea of a Seder plate in the first place? Why do we have to have a plate with 6 spots on it? Anybody know? Okay, this is important. Yeah, Batya.
It's an audio-visual aid and stimulates questions.
Okay, so yes, we can always fall back on that answer now. Very good. Stimulates questions, audio-visual aid. So the format of the Seder, when the rabbis designed it, remember I mentioned that this is a ritual designed by rabbis who, after the destruction of the temple, were trying to find a way to make a significant moment to remember the Seder night. What culture were these rabbis living in? Who were they being ruled by at the time? Anybody know? Who was ruling over the rabbis around the year 100, 150 in the land of Israel? Romans, right. Romans, and they were channeling Greek culture. And the rabbis had been ruled by the Greeks for years and years and years until about 150 years before this. The Romans took over. So the Romans and the Greeks have a special kind of meal called a symposium. Anybody ever heard of the Greek symposium? So, well, Tammy has, yeah, but you're kind of cheating. You live in my house. So, and my mom has. You've all been to my Seder before. So the Seder ritual actually looks a lot like a Greek symposium. So what did a Greek symposium look like? You would invite a bunch of people over to your house. You were a wealthy citizen of Rome or of Athens, and you would invite a bunch of people over to your house, and you would set them up on each with their own individual sort of divan, their own couch upon which to recline, and you would give them a plate that would have all the parts of their meal on it, a little like a bento box or a frozen TV dinner, but hopefully the food was better, right? And the host would manage the conversation for the guests. You would go from topic to topic to topic, encouraging conversation. You would bring in guest philosophers, and at the very end, you would bring in a comedian to do a little light entertainment. Anybody have a guess what that comedian was called? He was called an apikumus, which is probably the derivation of our word afikomen. because that's where so the rabbis were taking what they considered then to be a really fancy meal and a really sophisticated kind of a thing, and they made our Seder into basically a symposium, right? And that is why we have a Seder plate. The Seder plate is to remember the plates that everybody would have at a symposium. And one thing you can do at your own Seder is give everyone their own Seder plate. See if that gets them to ask questions, right? If the whole idea is to ask questions, do it like a symposium, get everyone to ask their own thing. Similarly, by the way, that is why we recline, right? We recline because they reclined in ancient Greece, if you were at a symposium. It meant you were a citizen, it meant you were free. So it's a great symbol of freedom. That's good. So that's why in preparation, we need the Seder plate to represent the sort of the meal of the symposium. And as an aside, you don't really need two kinds of bitter herbs. There are probably two spots for bitter herbs, one for the mitzvah of eating the bitter herbs themselves, and the other for the Hillel sandwich. Right before we eat, we're supposed to make a matzah of bitter herbs, but you do not need two places for bitter herbs. You do, however, need a zroa that usually looks more like a shank bone than a chicken wing. But if all you've got, I love that that was on here, that's why I picked this one. If you can't get a shank bone this year, it's fine, it's symbolic. We don't eat this, and it is not really a part of a Paschal lamb. So use a chicken leg, use a drawing of a shank bone. We understand, look, we make compromises for our circumstances. And the roasted egg also represents a sacrifice because there were two sacrifices that were made for Passover. One for the Paschal lamb and the other for the holiday itself, and probably an egg because it's springtime. You know, they were, all the bunnies were laying eggs around now, and so we have an egg. Okay. Similarly, you will need, if you want to do the reclining piece, you need a pillow. And when we recline at the Seder, we recline to the left, leaning to the left. Anybody know why we recline leaning to the left? Anyone besides my mom or my wife? Why? What's the difference between reclining to the left and reclining to the right? Jonathan, yeah.
I'd heard it had something to do with digestion.
Yes, it has something to do with the digestion. In ancient Greece, they always leaned to the left when they ate because apparently in your trachea, the pipe where the food goes down, there's a little hitch. And the hitch goes one direction or the other. I don't remember. I guess it must go leftward. And they thought that if you leaned to the right when you ate, you had more of a chance of choking than if you leaned to the left. And so in ancient Greece, we leaned to the left. That was the symbol of wealth and not having a care in the world. And so we also, even to this day, lean to the left. And by the way, there's a lot of things like this. It is not only a weird leftover of the Seder. This is the same reason why Haredim and ultra-Orthodox Jews wear black and white shirts. Anybody know why that is? Because that's the garb of Polish aristocrats, right? So they are still dressing like Polish aristocrats dressed in the 1800s, because to them, in their culture, that seems fancy. So too, in our Seder, we are getting we are reenacting the wealth of ancient Greece. Jonathan Berg asks, if we cannot get a lamb bone, is it better to have a picture of a lamb bone or a different animal bone? I would say probably, first of all, it's up to you. I would say to use a chicken bone if you can get like a chicken wing or a chicken leg, just to give the sense of a living being. But Otherwise, you can use a picture. By the way, which is what a lot of vegetarians do also. They just use a picture. So you can eat with your right hand. Rachel, I'm not sure I understand the question. Jackie Calvin says, Rachel, can you clarify your question about eating with the right hand? That's why we lean on our left. You can eat with the right because it was better to, that's a good practical answer as well. Okay, so going back to our things you need to prepare. So let's just run down the list real quick. So you need your Seder plate with karpas, maror, chazeret, zeroa, beitza, and charoset, as pictured here. A bowl of salt water for dipping the karpas into. An Elijah's cup, if you have one, great. Again, if you don't, dedicate one or make one. It doesn't have to be something special. By the way, as an aside, we also put out a Miriam's cup, which is a cup of water. Miriam, prophetess, also involved in the Exodus story. And she was connected to the people's ability to get water. That's a nice sort of modern contemporary practice. You need matzah. At least 3 matzah pieces stacked one on top of the other. They have special matzah covers with pockets to have these 3 matzot. But if you don't have that, that's fine. You can just separate them with a cloth or, quite frankly, a paper towel. If you don't have a cloth to use, again, it's important they have the 3 matzot stacked on top of each other, not as important that you have a fancy cover. You'll want a bowl and a pitcher for hand washing twice. The running gag apparently for this Passover is, twice or 200 times because we're all obsessed with hand washing right now. An afikomen bag, right? We're going to break the middle matzah. We're going to take the larger half and we're going to put it in an afikomen bag. If you have one, wonderful. If not, make one. Have your children make one, whatever it is. A pillow for reclining and a lot of planning. Okay, any questions? Stop there for a second on what you need to have out, what you need to prep, or if you saw something that I missed, which is totally possible, go ahead and chime in. No, everyone's good. Great. Okay, so moving on then. So for this point, oh, look at that. For this point going forward, I'm going to turn to this Haggadah. If you want to follow along, I'm going to put it in the Zoom. Or I think you can click it on in the document yourself to get there, or you can just follow along my search. So Bidikat Chametz, let's skip for now. We're going to talk about it on Tuesday night when we talk. You did say wine, right? Oh, thank you, Michael. Yes, we need a lot of wine, right? For my family, not as much as we usually have. Thank you, Lauren. Yes, you need to have, we'll definitely need to have wine to fulfill the mitzvah of drinking 4 glasses of wine. We usually buy a case of wine. Tammy and I are pretty sure we could get away with 2 or 3 bottles this year. So we'll talk Tuesday night more about Bidikat Chametz, the search for Chametz and cleaning our house for Passover. But I just wanted to mention at the beginning of most Haggadot is the ceremony for searching for Chametz and burning the Chametz, which will be on Wednesday morning, April 8th. We burn it. Tuesday night, April 7th, we search for it. What I want to say is don't make yourself crazy cleaning for Passover when you're all on top of each other. There's a reason why the rabbis gave us this formula that means all the chametz in my possession that I haven't seen and not eradicated is hereby nullified and made like the dust of the earth, is telling us that the rabbis know we're not going to get all of the chametz out of our house. We're going to do our best. And we've got a lot on our minds. So remember that there's this nullification ceremony and don't make yourself too crazy. Do candlelight, you bless the children. Okay, so the Seder starts with this passage, the order of the Seder. This is a mnemonic to remind us the order of what we're doing. So the Seder has these parts: Kiddush, hand washing, eating karpas, breaking the middle matzah, telling the story, washing our hands again, this time with a blessing, making motzi, eating maror, eating the Hillel sandwich, eating the festive meal, eating the afikomen, or dessert, barech, which is birkat hamazon, more singing songs of praise, and then a kind of silly ending with songs about lambs and who knows one and things like that. Okay, so we start out, the Seder actually means order. And we start out usually with the recitation of this order. And by the way, I don't know if I'm seeing hands when I'm in this view. So if you have a question or a comment, you can, oh, thank you, Tammy. Then just make a comment and I'll try and address it. Okay, we start off with Kiddush. So the first of 4 cups of wine is the Kiddush wine. It's a weekday night, so you just need this version of Kiddush. It's pretty basic. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. We don't have to worry about that part. After the Kiddush, you say Shachayanu, thanking God for reaching this holiday day. And then you drink. And when you drink your wine, you do it reclining to the left. Everything you do, you should do reclining to the left. Anytime you eat or drink, that I should say, maybe not the festive meal. We're not too practiced at eating that way. So, you know, don't be too messy. You don't want to embarrass yourself in front of your family, but, you know, do your best. So that's Kiddush. That is step 1. Step 2 is hand washing. So this hand washing is without a blessing. So there are technical reasons for this, and there are sort of what we've been talking about, Seder reasons for this, right? The technical reason is we're washing our hands now because we're about to eat something. What is the next thing we're going to eat? Kadesh, orchat, karpas, yachatz, right? So we're going to eat karpas. And what is karpas? Don't people also need candles to light before we start? Yes, that is in the Haggadah. It's in this Haggadah, it's not in all Haggadahs, but yes, you light Yontif candles, thank you, Ian, just as you would any other Yontif or Shabbat. Not technically part of the Seder itself. You light them before you make Kiddush. And it is customary to have like a Yortzei candle or a long burning candle out, off of which you would light the candles the second night as well. And off of which actually is a 3-day Yontif, you would light Shabbat candles on Friday night as well. So you are about to eat vegetables. So you make your hand washing and say a bracha before you eat bread. And so we'll do that later. This hand washing is just to sort of get our hands clean to eat our green vegetables. And so we don't say a blessing, but also it's very weird to have a hand washing that doesn't have a blessing. So maybe it's also to encourage questions, right? Because that was, for those who know, this would seem peculiar. After orchatz, we get to karpas. So karpas is supposed to be a vegetable that grows in the earth and it's not bitter. Right? We generally use parsley because it's springy, but you don't have to use parsley. We'll be needing to figure out how to need to adapt this to a Zoom Seder with 5 kids and 16 adults. First, we will sing Kadesh Rachatz, then how to organize and keep interesting. Okay, so Ruthie asked, if I'm doing this, okay, Rabbi, we're going through the steps. If I'm doing this by Zoom, how do I keep it together? Especially if there's a lot of people. So here is my answer to that. Prepare. Right? So assign parts beforehand, send them to your kids in advance, right? Tammy is great about keeping our Seder very creative. So she's done all kinds of different things. She's had people have to bring a song that represents a given part of the Seder or a given symbol of the Seder. So send out to them, okay, you are Karpas, which is springtime, and you need to bring a song about spring and sing it to us on our Zoom or whatever it might be, right? So the key, just like everything I said earlier, to having a successful Seder, I think whether it's by Zoom or whether it's in person, is to prepare and to do the legwork in advance, that when you sit down, you have your stuff all ready to go. Yes, Tamar, fix what I said.
Thank you.
No, just in addition, for anyone who's not super familiar with Zoom, what we found is that it's hard if everyone is unmuted at the same time. So you really can't be singing together without it causing it to sound weird. So you could either just have one person be the one who's singing out loud and everyone else is singing in their own homes along with them, or you can transfer who's, the one who's singing that. Like, let's say you have somebody singing Kiddush and another person doing the 4 questions, but you should really only have one unmuted at a time for the singing, or it's going to sound bad. But you'll just sing along like the way we do for services and things like that.
Yes, great point. Thanks, Tamar. Right, the management of Zoom itself. In fact, another thing to do to prepare might be to get on Zoom with a couple of people who are going to be at your Seder before Passover and do a little practice, right, of what it's like to pass the conch, as we would say, right, to know who's leading what part, and to give you an opportunity. So we're going to leave our Zoom open, and we're not going to play with the microphones because we won't do that on Passover. But if you will, then take some time, have a couple of family get-togethers where you can play with the muting and the unmuting, so that you'll know how to do that. Going back to our order of the Seder, so karpas can be any vegetable that grows in the ground that's not bitter. In the old country, and some people still have the custom to use potatoes. Why did they use potatoes? Doesn't seem very green or springy.
They didn't have anything.
Yes, Ruthie, right. So because that's what was growing, in northern Russia and Poland, when you got to the end of March, beginning of April, and Passover was coming, there was no parsley to be had. So you had potatoes because that's what you had. It grew from the earth, and so it worked. We generally use parsley. We dip it in the salt water, and we say the blessing, Borei Pri Ha'adama. Right? Blessed are you, Lord our God, who brings forth food of the ground, and then you eat the parsley or whatever you're eating. Celery, people use a lot, dipped in salt water. From this point in the Seder, I cannot emphasize this enough. Once you've said Borei Pri Ha'adama, you can eat anything that falls under that blessing. So that means carrot sticks. That means, Tammy, tell me some of the things that we put out when we, after we, say this.
Cucumbers, bananas we're going to do this year for the first time because I realized that it's also Borei Pri Ha'adama. So that's kind of a fun addition for this year. Maybe we put out like the salsa that you can dip in because that's also
pickled
just
vegetables,
tomatoes.
Right. And we bring this up because, well, Seder's long, and especially if you have kids or younger people are going to be part of your Seder, even if you just get kind of nashi, you can be eating from this point forward. From when we say Borei Pri Ha'adama forward, you can be snacking.
Thanks for
And by the way, there are also customs. Rabbis were very liberal about this over the years. They put out nuts, even though many nuts grow on trees, raisins, and they gave their kids candy, all kinds of things. This is not supposed to be torturous for children. The opposite, it's supposed to bring them in and engage them. And so there, over the years, have been all kinds of such customs. So feed people. That's what we're here for. Mom says pickles. Yes, pickles. We often have pickles. Dad says pickles. Okay. A lot of that. Okay. So that is the karpas part of the Seder. Okay. Then we get to yachat. So we have 3 matzot stacked, usually explained as one for each status of the Jewish people. The top matzah for Kohen, the middle matzah for Levi, and the bottom matzah for Yisrael. So we have 3. They are probably for more practical purposes. One to be the afikomen, the middle one, the top one to make motzi on, and the bottom one to eat with your meal. But we have 3. So yachatz is you take out the middle matzah and you split it in half. You tell everyone what you're doing, and you're going to take the larger portion and you're going to stick it in your afikomen bag. Now, I told you the derivation of the name afikomen just because I think it's interesting. But there's a lot of symbolism of this yachatz, of this putting away some bread for later, putting away the more bread for later. We're taught that this is something that people do who are poor, right? I remember when I was a little kid, very little kid, going to the diner with my great-grandma Cohn, who lived through the Depression, and she would always use half a packet of sweet and low, and she would take the other, and then she would fold up the top, and she would stick it in her pocketbook for later. And I thought she was crazy. But she knew poverty, and people who know poverty, they stash some away for later. So maybe that's the derivation of this custom. For the moment, I wanted to throw out a fascinating thing that I heard, which is that about 2.5 weeks ago, when this was all breaking and people thought they weren't going to be able to get food and they were panicking, matzah started to fly off the shelves of our local Stop and Shops. Who was buying it? Not Jewish people. I mean, probably some Jewish people also, but everybody. What was their thinking? Well, if I can't get bread, this stuff will probably last for a while and I'll have something to eat. And I just thought it was a fascinating commentary on matzah. Like, even today, it can still be the bread of poverty and the bread of affliction. I thought that was fascinating. I was like, that's going in my Seder for sure. So I thought I'd share it with you. I think that would be as interesting a thing as anything to talk about when we break the middle matzah. Moving forward, again, I'm going to go kind of fast because there's a lot to get to and so little time. Then we come to the Magid, the narrative portion of the Seder. And what I want to say about the Magid is that, you need to be creative about how much of this you're going to use and how much not. This is what made the Seder interesting to a bunch of rabbis in the year 150 or so. It might be different what makes the Seder interesting to you and your family. But what I'm going to go through the different sections of the Magid. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. By the way, I'm more than happy to have deeper conversations about any of this with you as you, over the next 10 days, prepare more. But you pick the ones, I recommend always that you don't do the entire Magid in any given Seder. I don't do the entire Magid in my Seder. But over the course of several years, you end up covering the whole thing, or even over the course of 2 nights, highlighting different places. So we start, like I said, from slavery. So we start the Magid with halach ma'anya. We raise up the matzah. This is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. By the way, I don't have anything on this yet, but I think there's something we have to do with that let all who are hungry come and eat line. Very, very famous line. Comes from the Talmud. And how do we feel about that in a time when, we can't invite people over to our house? What does that mean? And what is it supposed to inspire us to do? I guess to feed people even before the Seder, help them get the food that they need for Seder, which I know we're trying to do as a synagogue community, but I think there's a poignancy to that. Again, Thursday night, we're going to go deeper into a lot of this stuff. Next year in Israel, also with what's going on, there's no flights, we can't get there. Something that I have not experienced in my lifetime. I just want to remind you that I was born in 1975. I know some of you who are on this call remember a time when there wasn't a state of Israel, but I don't, or that it wasn't so easy to travel there, but I don't have that either. The first time in my life that if I wanted to get up and go to Israel, I can't, which is, means something deep to me, and that might be a moment in the Seder to talk about that. We refill the cups of wine now, because we're going to need them later in the storytelling, and we go to the 4 questions. I think we covered the 4 questions pretty well. Just a reminder, right? Shevachol halelos ein anu matbilim. On other nights, we do not dip vegetables even once, different from the question as we see it in the Haggadah, and this one about reclining is not there at all in the Mishnah. Also, just interesting. So those are our 4 questions. Okay. So I mentioned we started talking about the matzah as the bread of affliction. We start talking about ourselves as slaves. Right? We're supposed to see ourselves as being part of the Exodus story. And so it starts here with us saying we ourselves are slaves. Avadim hayinu leparo. There's a neat Sephardic custom or Mizrahi custom to have the kids throw the matzah over their shoulder and walk around with them while people hit them with leeks. Go figure, it's supposed to be like whips. You could do that or whatever else to sort of make this real for you. But this is a chance to be dramatic, right? We were slaves in Egypt. A chance to ask questions. What does it mean to you to be a slave? What does it mean right now to have our movements limited so severely? So I think there's a lot to do with Avadim Hayinu. Okay, so then we get the rabbis of Bnei Brak who had their Seder all day. They also asked the kids a question, where are you coming from, where are you going to? Yes, that is part of the, right. So the kids, as they carry the matzah, Jonathan reminds me, everyone else is supposed to say, where are you coming from? And they say, slavery in Egypt, where are you going to? Eretz Yisrael, the land of our freedom. So again, just something to add some drama to it. I think that this is here to show us that there were all kinds of Seders going on. These 5 rabbis of Bnei Brak, they talk all night, which you're not supposed to do, by the way. Seder's supposed to end by midnight, according to law, but they were really, really into their conversation. And so that's their conversation. Fine. Then we get to the part, so this part should not be skipped. The 4 children. Now, 4 children is just a great passage about different ways that people learn. And I just want to show you. So this is from the Haggadah, A Different Night, which is the same as A Night to Remember, but it's the original version. And it's a little clunky. But what I love about it is it has all these great illustrations, all these great images of the different things that the wicked sons, the wicked children could be. Here's sort of like a medieval image. But my favorite one is this one. This is from Israel during the sort of resettlement. And what's interesting to me about it is when we see sort of Orthodox depictions of the 4 sons, who is usually the righteous son, the wise son? Who is usually the wise son?
His son.
What's that? He's usually right here. I'll show you another image. So the wise son is usually, there's a lot of creative ones in here. Hold on, I'm trying to find a basic one. Here, right? So like in this image on the upper right, the wise son is probably the one in the yeshiva studying, and the wicked one, I don't know, what do you think, is the one who's fighting and making trouble, and the one who doesn't know how to ask the question is young, and the simple one is just sort of like hanging out. That's usually how they're depicted. What I like about this one is that in early Israel, the Chacham, right, the wise son, is depicted as sort of like this, like modern Israeli B'nai Akiva. He's wearing like slacks and a button-down shirt, and the Tom is a young child, as an immigrant getting right off the boat. I don't know if you can see that. And the one who doesn't know how to ask is depicted as sort of the yeshiva bacher, which I think is so interesting. And who's the Rasha in early Israel? The capitalist, the one who's in it for himself, right? So that's like the labor Zionist depiction of the four sons, and it kind of mixes them up. And the other thing, the other image I love is this one, which I think is trying to depict that like they're all kind of the same. That each of us is all of the sons, and we all have a little bit of all of them in us. So anyway, there's a million things to do with this passage, and you should do it, and and kids find it interesting. So I love that. Any questions or thoughts that I didn't quite get to on the four sons? And by the way, those images, you can find them all over the internet. So if you want, go get some different images, and you can bring them. They've been depicted so many different ways. This is like the Marx Brothers, right? You have Harpo who doesn't know how to ask a question, and Groucho, who I guess is the wise one. Last year I saw, if anybody's into The Good Place, I saw one depicting the four characters of The Good Place, each one as wise, simple, right? So there's all kinds of great stuff out there, and so you can be creative with it. Good. Questions, thoughts? Okay, let's go back to the Haggadah. And again, going back to Ian's comment a while ago, that questions bring out the different kinds of learners. I think this is also brings out not only different kinds of learners, but also the different kinds of teachers. You know, we are identifying the kids as wicked or wise, but the reaction of the teacher, I think, is something interesting to explore also, if they're doing their job as well as could be done. I have not seen the Abbott and Costello parody. Ian mentions an Abbott and Costello parody of the four children with Who's on First, which I will Google after we are done. Thank you. Okay. Okay, there's a little bit more Torah. I don't think I have to. Okay, in the beginning. So now this is, I was talking about, this is the passage about Abraham. In the beginning, our ancestors were idol worshippers. This highlights again our spiritual enslavement in addition to our physical enslavement, and I think gives us an opportunity to discuss the different ways in which we are enslaved today. And I don't mean physically in our homes, but I mean, you know, by what we think is important and what we don't. I think particularly we've gotten a very good education in what we can live with and what we can live without over the last little while. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about that. V'hisha Amda. This is a conclusion of that passage about Abraham, about God protecting Abraham and us forever. This covenant that remained constant for our ancestors and for us has saved us against any who arose to destroy us in every generation and throughout history. When any stood against us to annihilate us, the Kadosh Baruch Hu kept saving us from them. So I think that's another, by the way, really interesting point to jump off of for this particular Seder. And now, it's not in here. somewhere in here, also in the Hartman Haggadah, there's a listing of all the places from which Jews have been exiled, and all the terrible circumstances under which Seders have been made. And I think V'hi She'amda is a really good point to talk about that. Right, that we feel because we are definitely making under very bad circumstances, certainly in our lifetime, a Seder. But this is a point, especially if you have mature people who are going to be at your Passover Seder. You get the V'hi She'amda to talk about the terrible circumstances under which other Starim have been made. From the first night when we were huddled in our houses and the angel of death was passing among the Egyptians, to the Crusades and all the different exiles, to the Shoah. You know, there's lots and lots of stories about the Holocaust, about people trying to do their best to make a Seder. I think it's good to get a little bit of perspective that way. And by the way, there's a lot of people writing about this stuff, again, on the net that you can check out if you want to go in that direction. But I think that is one meaningful direction to take this Seder's conversation. And I encourage you to join us Thursday night. We'll talk more about that. Okay, and then we get the central part of the story, which is my father was a wandering Aramean. Now, this is a very, very weird place to base our story of the telling. This is as close as we get to the telling to an actual telling of the story of the Exodus. And we're more than halfway through the Maggid already. And this is a very strange passage upon which to base it. Joel asked a very interesting question. Are there other parts of the service that change from Haggadah to Haggadah? And the answer is yes, absolutely. There are some that remain constant, the basic structure. But if you go back to that list of virtual Haggadahs that I sent you and look at the different ones, you know, there's a social justice Haggadah, and there's a Chabad Haggadah, and there's a UJA Federation Haggadah, and a Boston Federation Haggadah, and everyone will have made choices about what to highlight and what to emphasize. Many are complete. I picked this one because it's a complete Haggadah, but many pick and choose. And so absolutely. In fact, one year, Tammy and I, we just went and we bought a different Haggadah for everybody at the Seder. It was an interesting experiment. I don't necessarily recommend it as a regular way to do it. But we just had people call out if you have something interesting about this part or you have something interesting about that part. And so it's definitely the Haggadah that you use can make all the difference. So take some time to look through them and really decide on the one that's right for you and what you're trying to accomplish. Or I really like that idea of kind of building your own. Arami Oved Ivri, this passage is actually a passage about Shavuot. This is what you would say when you would bring your first fruits on Shavuot. It is really weird that the rabbis try and shoehorn the telling of the story of the Pesach Seder into a passage about Shavuot. I think they do it because they want you to ask questions. I think they do it because it's kind of short. The end of this passage, by the way, which is not here, then Adonai brought us out from Egypt with a strong hand and outstretched arm, with great awe, marvelous signs, and with wonders, and brought us to this good land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And so I bring this basket of fruits to you. So there's maybe, even though the rabbis didn't write it explicitly, maybe there's a reminder here, a Zionist reminder, sort of that while we're talking about the Exodus, let's not forget what this is really about is the redemption. I very rarely go through this entire Midrash. It is a great exercise in Midrash. They take every other word and they relate it to a different verse from somewhere in the Torah. This is the classical way of rabbis doing Midrash. You have to read, sorry, I'm going back up. Sorry if that was dizzying. You have to read this passage to have your Seder be a Seder. You do not have to go through all these pages and pages of commentary on Arami Oved Ivri. My father was a wandering Aramean. That's up to you. And you can see there's a lot of it. So this could be one interesting thing to do for a whole Seder, or something that you can just mention and have interesting discussion about, and move on from. This is all still the this sort of forced backward way of telling the story. So you do as much of that as you want, but you don't have to do all of it. The culmination of that story, of that piece, is the 10 plagues. And of course, it's customary to spill a drop of wine for each of these plagues, which, as you say them, and you can say them, they're not listed so nicely here. These are the plagues that the Lord must be, he said. Should we rejoice for the plagues? I would like to see them just listed out. Here we go. It's like, it's got to be in here somewhere. Fine. So these are the 10 plagues. For every one of them, you spill a drop of wine. Do not lick your fingers after, spilling a drop of wine, because we're like pointing out, throwing out the evil. So tell everyone, don't lick your fingers afterwards. We're not supposed to eat up the plagues. And final way to count, there's 3 more drops for a mnemonic we're supposed to use to remember. Okay, then there's this wild passage. I happen to love this passage of rabbinic math. Another example of things that change in Haggadot: after pour out my wrath, pour out my love, right? So this is rabbinic math, where they say at the Red Sea, there were so many more plagues than the Egyptians experienced. It's a very rabbinic kind of thing, and I enjoy it, but it is totally skippable if you don't want to do rabbinic math at your particular Seder. Then we sing Dayenu. We usually sing about 3 verses of Dayenu. Interesting topic for discussion. The whole poem makes absolutely no sense. Discuss with your Seder guests. I said, had he brought us out of Egypt and not executed judgments against the Egyptians, it would have been enough. That's probably not true. Had he, blah, blah, goes on, had he given us the riches and not split the sea for us, it would have been enough. Actually, no, we'd still be stuck in Egypt if that's how it happened. So what does it mean, Dayenu? And what does it mean that it would have been enough? I think is an interesting question. I think, so there's Dayenu. We usually only do a few verses. Then there is a Seder. Sorry, is my microphone still working? I think my things, I have to switch. Hold on one second. I'll put,
Okay, can you all still hear me? I think my headphones are dying. Thank you. Sorry, so I mentioned that in our Seder at the very beginning that we have 2 different Seders. This next piece, and again, I apologize for the speed. You can go back and ask me any questions that you want, privately or over the thing. Rabban Gamliel had a whole different idea about how we should do the Seder. And so he said, basically, you have to mention 3 things: the Pesach, the Matzah, and the Maror. So this part you have to do. Because Rabban Gamliel said your Seder is not, you have to do. By Jewish law, this is not skippable. You at least have to mention each one and what they are. The Pesach represents the Paschal Lamb. The Matzah represents the bread that we ate with our Paschal Lamb, and the Maror, the bitterness. Each one is explicated much more greatly than that. You can read through that section or not. Usually we raise the plate that has this item on it as we go. Ruth, this would be like a great place to assign out, like, so this family is going to do the Pesach, this family is going to do the Matzah, this family is going to do the Maror, or something like that. But again, giving out parts in advance, I think, is going to be pretty key to making the whole virtual Seder work. And we have to say this before we eat, before we get on to the next part. In every generation, we are obligated in every generation. Why is this not saying Bechol Dor V'Dor Chayav Adam They wrote et atzmo ke'ilu hu miMitzrayim. This is not the translation of that. So it means in every generation, a person is obligated to see themselves as if they themselves came out of Egypt, and therefore we thank God. And so the next part of the it's still technically part of the Magid section, but it's sort of a prelude to Hallel. He actually puts it as Hallel here. So there's a few songs of praise. You don't have to do them all. If you want to, you can. Some of them, if you are familiar with Hallel, will recognize them. Others less so. You can read them in English or Hebrew. We usually sing a couple of them. B'tzeit Yisrael, mi Yisrael. We usually sing a couple of them. And then we get to the second cup. So each of the 4 cups has a purpose in the Seder. One is for Kiddush. The second one is to go with our meal. The third is the cup over which we say Birkat Hamazon. And the fourth is goes with Nirtzah, goes with the frivolity at the end, the singing of the songs. So this is an important point. I know we're going a little long, but we're just going to slam through. And if you have to go, you can. This is being recorded, and we're going to send out the recording. Look, the Seder has 2 parts: one before the meal and one after. Everything we've done up until now is before the meal. I know that a lot of people do not get back together and do the Seder after the meal. If that is going to be the case for you, especially under the circumstances when we're not actually eating together. It's hard to know when we're gonna, hang up our Zoom calls or whatever. Then push these things earlier. Now, quite frankly, it makes no sense to drink the 3rd cup of wine, which is for Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, before we have our meals. But I am a Seder liberalist. And what I mean by that is it's more important that you have 4 cups of wine and that you experience having 4 cups of wine. And if someone is smart enough to ask, isn't this cup of wine supposed to happen after the thing? Then great, then you just got someone to ask a question, which is what the Seder is all about. That's how I'm a Seder liberalist. So so right now we get to motzi, and we get to so we have the 2nd cup, and we wash our hands this time with a blessing, ritually wash our hands. We say the motzi on the matzah, and there's 2, by the way, blessings there. Remember, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and also here on the mitzvah of eating matzah, and we eat the matzah. Then we eat some bitter herbs. You're supposed to take the bitter herbs on a fork and dip them into some charoset, or you can use matzah to do that too at this point, so that you have some sweet with the bitter. You eat the bitter herbs. And then the Hillel sandwich, where he would have matzah. He would make a roast beef sandwich out of his paschal lamb, right? He'd take matzah, he'd put some horseradish sauce on it, and he'd put the paschal lamb. We don't have the paschal lamb, so we don't get, so we just have matzah and horseradish. It is not the same, but we still do it in memory of Hillel. And then we're eating, right? So, but there are some important parts that we have missed. So if you are not coming back to do your Seder, I want to encourage you, add in 2 more cups of wine. How do you do that? Go ahead and this is all Birkat Hamazon. After Birkat Hamazon is, of course, the famous visit from Elijah. So if you're doing it, early, then put Elijah's visit earlier. Sorry, there's a lot of Birkat Hamazon in this. I gotta. Okay, so have your 3rd cup and drink it with Elijah, right? Which is at the end, but you shouldn't not have Elijah. So sing Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, and drink another cup of wine. And if you have kids, they open the door here, or if they're on Zoom, have the kids go open the door at their house. Tell them Eliyahu showed up he's not there because he's here. You can do all kinds of shtick with it. And right, and then same thing with the 4th cup, sing Had Gadya. Oh, by the way, there's this pour out your wrath passage. This is what Tammy was referring to. There's a Pour Out Your Love. It's a more contemporary edition because we're not so good with this whole pouring out your wrath piece. Although I think it's something worth, again, if you're still having a Seder afterwards, we've had some very interesting discussion about what a luxury it is to say we're not into pour out your wrath, and that there are times when we haven't had that luxury, but pour out your love. And then you can do there's more Hallel, and then there's singing, and there is, and then we get to the songs at the end, Who Knows One, and Had Gadya, and you can attach another cup of wine to that. So my point is, I think that it's very important that you do 4 cups of wine. I think it's very important that you get Eliyahu in there. So if you're not coming back, ideally you come back and you finish the Seder. It takes another 45 minutes maybe if you do it completely like I do. If you just pick and choose, you can do it in like 20 minutes. But if you're not going to put that stuff before you eat, and make sure you have space for it, because the Seder is just not a Seder without Eliyahu and without having 4 cups of wine or grape juice or whatever you are going to drink. Whew, okay, my throat is exhausted. So that's a Seder in a nutshell. I'll take any questions you have or thoughts. Play with it, prepare, do your research, play teacher. This is your opportunity. That's our job when it comes to all of this. Any last thoughts or questions? Okay, I guess I was thorough. Thank you and very helpful. Good, I'm glad. All right, folks, listen, be in touch. I will mention Tuesday night we are doing, Tuesday night we're doing a thing on Passover cleaning and prep in general and under these circumstances. So you can join us for that at 7:45. Thursday night we're going to go back over the pieces of the Seder, not so thoroughly, in an hour or an hour and 20 minutes, with sort of Passover in the time of COVID, with the particular interpretations based on where we are now. Rabbi Siegelman and I will be doing that together Thursday night at 7:45. Next Sunday, we're going to do another thing like this, which is going to be open sharing, an idea exchange. So Ruthie, definitely tune in next Sunday as we've all sort of thought through the challenges. We can share with each other how we're going to do it. I had a question about the Afikomen. Definitely if you're Zooming with kids, you should have their parents hide an Afikomen somewhere. And I think you can Amazon them Afikomen presents if that's your if that's your custom. All right, folks, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chag Sameach. And if you have any questions, please email me or call me, and I look forward to speaking. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.